did it scare you, or? All right, good. Are we on? Okay, it's Wednesday, February 7th, and P&Z meeting. I'm calling this meeting to order at 6:11. We'll start with roll call.
Brian Nash.
Mike Rhodes.
Tony Stein.
Dave Bench.
The city attorney.
Okay, very good. We have a quorum. We'll go to the consent agenda now, and I trust everyone has had an opportunity to study the minutes from our November 1st meeting. They look pretty good to me.
They looked great. I'd go ahead and I'm ready to move
Fits exactly with my
to
memory.
approve the
Oh,
minutes,
all
if that would be helpful.
It would very much. Okay, do we have a?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
I just moved.
Oh, you
He
did?
just
I
moved,
second.
yeah, I think
Second.
We're looking for a second.
Second.
Yes.
All right,
Here, so I didn't want to.
we got a first.
Technically, you can vote.
I
We-
can't.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes carry. Here we go. On to the regular agenda. We don't have anybody signed up for public, okay, for public hearing. Okay, so on to the regular agenda, discussion and regarding the preliminary recommendations report from the Comprehensive Residential Code Review Committee, lovingly known as the CRCRC. I wanted to spend a few minutes with you folks talking about where we are with the CRCRC. Actually, I had done a presentation here at the last city council meeting. And it wasn't my preference to start at the city council, but with the holidays and schedules and just the way things come up, I really wanted to do B&Z first, but took advantage of the opportunity to speak at city council, and now we're going to do this. From here on in, any discussion that we have about CRC and recommendations and approvals and whatnot, I'd like to start here, and then, based on your comments, then take those to city council. All right? I think that was what we had designed the CRCRC around, and so I hope I didn't offend anybody by going to city council this first.
I actually was on the watching that meeting
Yeah.
too, so I got see your overview there. Which was
No offense taken at all.
No offense. Thank you
It's a
very
little
much.
chicken and the egg. Where do
I
you
am-
start with these things?
I
It's
couldn't
tough.
be more pleased.
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to make a few comments before I get into this. I think you should have in your packet a copy of the recommendations, but
Do we,
we
can I
had,
have the Wi-Fi password?
It's the Rollingwood guest, and it's all lowercase Rollingwood. Very secure.
Super, and we just put it out. Yeah, it's awesome.
Just hacked into the mainframe.
all right.
Y'all don't have a printed copy of that, do you?
We can print right now. Does everybody want one?
I've got mine.
Oh,
I
that'd be
came
great.
prepared.
That'd be
great.
better, yeah. Just to,
I'm good. I'm good. I have mine with all kinds of stuff written all over it.
Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you.
Well, I can still talk about it before you get to it, all right? Just by way of introduction, as you know, we completed this survey across Rowanwood here in early November. And since that time, CRCRC has spent many hours, all individually, in subcommittee, and in public meetings, reviewing and analyzing the results. You know, from the Bowie presentation from a couple of months ago, that the
Is this one generated by Bowie?
yes,
Okay.
that we had 273 responses, and that represents 218 households. So we had a number of households that doubled up, husband, wife, presumably.
Thank you so much.
And with those 273 responses, we had 2,257 written comments. And whenever I say written comments, those could have been anything from 3 words to a dissertation. It is our good fortune to have a well-educated public here in Rowanwood, and people who want to speak their mind are very elegant at doing so. And we got what I thought was just a tremendous response. It's been getting through the entire set of comments takes some doing, but you really do get a good sense for what the community is thinking about our building codes. So I think it's also a testament to the survey itself that it worked pretty well, that we did get the kind of feedback we were looking for. Looking in hindsight, there's probably a few things we would have changed, but by and large, it came off all right. So,
There was a lot of good, positive feedback on the survey from.
oh yeah. Most people who talk to me about the survey at all are making positive comments about it. The only negative comment that I heard, and I only heard this from one person, is they didn't like that we had asked how much the family income was at the end of the survey.
Yeah, I had people
Yeah.
reach out to me asking about that, and I asked Jeff about it, and I think y'all made it optional or made some.
Yeah, it was optional, it wasn't a requirement. And the only reason we had done, well, the primary reason we had done it is in the previous comprehensive planning survey, they included that question. And we wanted to see whether or not the demographics had changed. That's pretty much it. And really, it's kind of cool because you can assign a demographic, we don't know who wrote what, but we are able to sort the data so that we know that the same person answered this, and this. And so we can break things down by income and by age and things like that. It works out pretty well. So you have seen the numeric response. Antonia just lifted that up. And those are kind of like just kind of a rough thing that Bowie had put out. They don't really tell the story. I think there's a lot more of the story in the comments than there are in the yes/no answers, or good enough, or that kind of thing. And I made the mistake of not looking at the differences between what they had presented at Bowie and what numbers I'm going to be talking about in this presentation. In that, when Bowie did their rough count of like how many yeses there were, how many nos, or how many they're satisfied or unsatisfied, they had used the number of people who had answered that question as the denominator for their percentage. In other words, we had 273 responses, but if only 250 responded to a particular question, Bowie built their percentages off of that.
So the percentage of people who answered the question is the percentage
Only,
shown in there.
only on the percentage of people who answered the question.
So some people
What-
just skipped random questions?
Some people did skip.
Did not answer percentage? They didn't give you
Uh,
that, they just lumped it into.
They did not. But
you can
But,
can
oh, yeah,
discern
yeah,
that.
we have we have. So whenever I start talking about the survey, I use the 273 as the denominator. How many people were for it, how many people were against? To me, the population that didn't answer is part of the population. That's all there is to it, Whether or not they understood the question or didn't want to answer it or whatever, I have no idea. But I do know of that 273, how many people answered the question this way or that. So there was some discussion around that in the city council meeting.
Yeah.
That these numbers, what Tony has in front of him, doesn't necessarily going to match what I did. But I've got to tell you, the percentages, it's not material. It's not that big a deal. Also, too, I want to remind everyone that this wasn't this is a survey. It's not a ballot. We're not voting on this. This is about what your perception is, what your feelings are about this or that. It's not about, well, if it's 51%, then that wins. It's not that. Okay?
I will
So-
say, I think that the whole origination of the CRCRC was, we're unique in that our community is small enough that you can try with certain big things to be more democratic about it than you can in the city of Austin. And almost all of our land really is residential, and in most cases, that's a single-family home that represents people, one of their larger, single investments, and obviously any of these kind of changes are going to impact that one way or another. And so I think the whole point of this was to find out, does the community think we have a problem, whatever that problem may be, and what are their thoughts on solving it? And in an effort to be, one, democratic as much as you can be. You can't, it's not a vote. But also to, to give everyone an opportunity to have a voice, so that, that's why when I was talking to Kevin about this a lot at the beginning, was at the end of this, my hope would be that there's nobody with a straight face who can come back in when changes are made and say, I had no idea this was happening and I didn't have the say, nobody asked me. Is go through this as much as possible and make sure nobody has, any excuse or felt like they didn't have an opportunity to have their voice heard. And I think y'all did a really good job of that, both with the survey and a lot of meetings that I know were not well attended, like this one. But I think to me it's important that at the end of this, the community feels like that we've got something from the community, which is, what happened with the commercial one and what this was somewhat modeled after.
Yeah, no, I think this has been a really great process, and I think we have done everything we can to give people an opportunity to talk. Yeah. You probably said this at the beginning, or you've said it before, or it's just on a piece of paper that I forgot the number on, but the number of households you mentioned, how does that compare relative to the total number of households in Rollingwood? It was like 215 or something?
We went and did the hang tags. I believe we dropped that to 419 households.
Okay, so we're pretty close to half.
We did more than
in
that.
terms of like,
We'd actually,
It's a little bit over. It's
that
a little
responded,
over,
yeah.
over
that
half responded.
Households responded.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It, we're
Which in
So when
some
you-
ways feels disappointing, but is pretty good. in
Yeah.
when you think that
reality,
voter turnout, like numbers are
Yeah.
much worse.
a lot worse than that, right?
Well, but some of those went to rental units.
Yeah.
And, there's probably 5%.
there were a few
And there are actually a
people.
few
There were a
people
few
that were
renters
renters
who
that-
did
yeah.
respond.
I was surprised.
Yeah,
about that.
that's
Not many, but by and large, we're pretty happy with the response. We thought we went out and banged the drum pretty hard on this, particularly in the end before the end date, and it looked early on, and we were questioning Bowie pretty much on a daily basis, how many responses have we gotten so far? And early on, we got like 100, and then it was a week later, we had 105, and we're like, oh, geez, it's terrible. But in the end, there was a big push in the end, and we got another 100 or so, that probably more than we expected. So we're pretty happy with it. We good, Brian?
What's that?
Did it answer your question? Or
Oh, it did. Yeah, I was
yeah.
trying to get a sense
Yeah.
of what our response rate looked
Right.
like for
Okay.
the survey, and
Right.
and so
Yeah.
kind of going to Tony's point, we're trying to give everybody a
Right.
voice, and if you chose not to, I mean, I don't know how you could say with a straight face that you didn't know that this process was going on.
There were mailers, there were emails, there were texts.
I mean, I don't know how much
Yeah.
more we could have gotten the word out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we had about 50-ish%, give or take, of
Yeah.
households that were willing to take the time to tell us what they thought. And
Right.
So that's helpful.
So, like I was saying, that, the actual numbers, whenever, like if you just take the yes and no's and add them up and get percentages, that doesn't necessarily tell the story as to what we're hearing from the folks. And as an example, I'll just use the first question. The first question, question one is, are you generally satisfied with the trend of new construction in Rollingwood? And 140, or 51% of the responses said that they were. Said, yes, I'm happy. But of those 140, 63 provided written comments. And of those 63 written comments, 18, actually more than 18, but you're splitting hairs on some of the way people say things, but 18 comments clearly said things like, yes, I'm happy, but the homes that are being built now are too large. So which almost negates the yes response.
Well, I don't know. I'm actually one of those. I was laughing. It is, when you just look at numbers, it's kind of surprising that you have the stark contrast between these two. But I was laughing at myself because I'm one of those, is, you know, and there's probably more like this. I'm like, if nothing changed,
Yeah,
I'm not going to lose any sleep. I'm
Right.
generally fine with everything.
yeah,
If something's going to change,
Yeah.
yeah, I have some opinions about that. And I think
Sure.
that we could change some things
Yeah.
that would improve.
yes.
But also, if 90% of the people said everything is good, you know, I wasn't going to lose any sleep over it. I think things
Right.
are generally good. We obviously have some unique exceptions that really started this whole process.
Sure.
But generally, I think it's
Well,
good.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think that sentiment is captured by a result like that to me, which is that, like, by and large, I don't think you hear, if we have 10 construction projects going on at a time, you don't really hear about 10 out of 10 usually, but 9 out of 10 for the most part. But it's like the one glaring bad apple that keeps bringing up sort of like, hey, there is a loophole that we need to see if
That's
we can
right.
close. So I think because of that, you get people saying like, yeah, generally I think 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10 we're fine.
Yeah.
But, you know, we should think about if there's a way to capture this outlier.
And that's the trickiest thing about the whole deal, is I think ultimately what most people want is to manage, is to eliminate those outliers. It's very hard to manage to the worst extreme, and also
But
try not to overdo it or whatever, throw the baby out with the bathwater, you know. It would be great if we could just say the rules are different for spec builders, but
Well,
obviously
there-
that's not legal.
there is no question that I
It's-
don't think without
it's
those
not, right,
outliers, I
Attorney?
don't even think we'd be talking about this.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
You
yeah.
know? And so it becomes a matter of, well, okay, you have these outliers, it stimulated this whole business. And what people are saying, or what we think we're hearing, is that don't let any more of that happen. Okay, you know, I mean, it is what it is. Can we keep it from getting worse? What I was saying about the 18, you know, yeah, sure, everything is great, except houses are too large. You see later on throughout, if you really get into the analysis, you find that an awful lot more of the people that said yes, that they're generally happy, as they get through further and further into the survey, they get less happy. That there are more people that you can, like I say, we can run a string through an individual, and we can see whether or not that individual truly is happy about everything. Or do they make comments or change their answers along the way that indicates that they have some issues with this, that, or some other thing that we're doing. Point being is that we think that we're on the right track, that we do have a mandate to do this kind of analysis. We do have a mandate to look at things and see whether or not the rules that are in place now are still fit for purpose. That's kind of it. I think that's our charge, and and we're pursuing it. We think that we've got the support from the public on it. We also think that the survey was more of somewhat of an educational process where people didn't really realize what the codes were, or how they worked, or what the setback even is, or any of that kind of stuff. And it's through the survey that they kind of learned what the discussion was. What are we talking about? What is this? What do I like? What don't I like? Those kinds of things. So the survey did a lot more for us than just get us an answer. I think it got us a set of opinions, or a bit of education. So our CRCRC meetings have centered on aligning our own views with the public, trying to figure out, everybody's read through all the comments, everybody understands the statistical aspect of it. What do we think we're hearing? And so we've been working on these analyses to say, well, we think the public is saying this, or we think the public is saying that. And from that, we've gotten 17 recommendations that we've shared, as I say, with City Council, and I'm sharing them with you this evening. And every one of these 17 recommendations has been approved by all 7 members of the CRCRC. So we've had a unanimous approval on all of these. I can only give you overview stuff right now because a lot of the details are being worked in subcommittee. And as time goes on, those details will get firmed up and we'll be able to come back and tell you this is what it looks like we're getting to. And this is only a preview of where we are. These subcommittees, in our last CRCRC meeting, we didn't advance anything. We just talked about how the city council meeting went and what we're hearing from the public. And we made subcommittee assignments. So in our next meeting, we're expecting to get at least 2 reports from subcommittees that'll help pave the way for better, more detailed recommendations. Okay? So that's the story of the survey, and we can talk about the recommendations now. So, first off, our guiding principle is this, and you tell me if you think we're off base, but to modify the building code to lessen the impact of new residential construction and remodels on established neighborhoods per community input. Or not, really. It's like, this is all being driven by the public and is being driven by what's going on right now in the public. So with regard to building height, residential buildings, we will be no higher than 35 feet at any point. And what this means with regard to the method for measuring building height, we are not, we don't have that yet. That is in subcommittee. But you can be sure that whatever the method we select to promote will be one that does not allow any portion of a building to be higher than 35 feet. There won't be this so-called 10 feet of grace or whatever is in the current code. And part of the reason why we're
And that's
having...
from the grade, 35 feet at every
Yeah,
point along the way.
That's right, yeah. It'll be that. No more than 35 feet. Might even be less in some areas. Could be.
So you are gonna take, it doesn't say here, but the assumption I assume is that you're gonna take topography into account.
Yes.
And
Yes.
somehow you're gonna section it, step it,
We're looking at,
whatever.
we're looking at codes from a lot of different places and seeing how they solve the problem.
Yep.
And based on that, we're trying to come up with what we think is the best recommendation for the topography of Rollingwood.
Yep.
And the lot size.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah, it would be tough to say at any point without, because otherwise you just have to follow the grade with your roof, if you
Yeah.
were. That would be kind of tough.
Yeah, I think
no, that's
that,
not-
I mean, y'all looked at the City of Austin
Yeah.
one, which is I think that you take third points.
Yeah.
Or it might be third points or 50 feet, whichever's less, whatever. And so you take the average grade, if this is the house on the first third, whatever the average is, then it's 35 feet from the average, and then you take the next average. So if it's going up, you can get taller. If it's going down, obviously you have to go down. That way the roof can kind of,
Yeah.
because if it's dropping a little bit here, it's,
And other cities use similar approaches.
yeah.
It's not just the city of Austin. There are a lot of places out there that are doing something similar.
So in that one, you could have points within the third, where if you measured a straight line from some point of grade, where it could be more than 35 feet.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of every lot's doing something, right? And so if it's like here you're 27 feet, but the roof is on this area, then would you measure it here under the roof? How do you, so it's just
Well,
which they're
and that
working
becomes
on.
the question as to which way are we going to handle
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
But yeah, but that's being worked.
Are
And
you all thinking of doing
hopefully next? I'm optimistic that by next P and Z meeting, I'm going to have that. I'll bring something to
Yep.
you. The idea, what we're doing here, folks, is we don't want to get too deep into this and then have everybody say, "Oh no, don't do that." We don't. We're trying to get the information out at a rate that allows you all, the public, to process it and decide whether or not, you know, we should be going forward with this stuff. We don't want rakes and spears, you know? We're trying to get to an answer that everybody has an opportunity to think about before we put it into the code.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's a helpful explanation, and I think that's the right way to do it. I think iterative and continuing to get feedback as you go along is gonna make it so that there's less pitchforks.
We
So
want
I
few
think-
pitchforks.
I think it's a good plan.
Trying to keep it down.
Are y'all considering in the height? I mean, I think you said maximum anywhere, so I'm guessing the answer is
Yeah.
maybe yes. But are you considering kind of keeping it lower against closer to property lines?
That is one of the things, yeah, yeah, yeah. That
That's the tinting
it's being kicked
concept.
around, well, it's what, that the wall at a property line can't be 30.
Yep.
This isn't, this isn't to take home.
This is
This is being
This
discussed.
is yes, I got you.
Part of the discussion, that a wall at the property line wouldn't be 35 feet tall.
Or at the setback.
Or the setback line.
Yes, at the setback line,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
And then
We have not gotten there, but we are talking
Yeah.
about that.
the
And that's part of the reason why we're doing this, is because it's on, you know, people can watch this and they know that we're thinking about these things,
yeah.
so. We all right?
Yeah, I was hoping for a glass of water somewhere.
Do you want one some of this here?
That's
You
I
can
was
go-
eyeing
you
that.
can go for a,
I was eyeing
you
that.
know.
Okay. So there's also some other height specifics that are going to be developed that include a building envelope defined by the property boundaries and allowable heights that will constrain the permittable dimensions of a building. And we believe, these percentages that I put behind there, we believe that is supported by 50% of the population. By the,
And this number differs from here because this is on,
this is based on a number of people who answered, or who had participated in the survey, this 56%.
so
270.
here would be lower because less people participated. Or because
It-
some
it could-
people
it
didn't
could be
answer the
lower or
question
higher. It
right.
could go either way. It could go either way.
How could it be higher? I guess I was thinking it would always be
In
lower
terms of
here
a
because,
in terms of a percentage.
because this is percentage of people who answered that question. This is percentage.
That,
Of
what you,
people who
what you
were
have
asked
your
the
hand
question.
on is the percentage of people who answered the question. If, I think it actually, they wrote it, if you look, the way they talk,
Mm.
okay?
So 260 answered, 14 skipped.
See?
So this is,
Let the record
Percent of
reflect
the
that everybody's
260?
hovering around Tony.
Yeah.
and yours would be, here it's roughly the same, but
Yeah, I gotta say, you know, I got busted at the city council meeting because my percentages didn't match the Bowie percentages. And the reason is because I hadn't paid attention to them. I didn't even look at them, you know, I was just, well, this is what we're doing, this is our analysis. And, yeah, there's some differences, but is it material?
so
No.
remind me, yours 66% is the percentage of what?
Is the percentage of people who had said that would support height specifics
Restricting
that
height.
include an envelope surrounding.
And
the
so
house.
that might not be, that percentage may not be of the total people who participated in the survey in any form or fashion. It's the percentage of people who answered that question?
No,
No.
the opposite.
Okay, this is the percentage of,
Okay, now
so
People-
the denominator on yours is always
273.
270, or here
Always
it says
273.
274,
Um,
but I don't know what the,
Yeah,
what's, yeah, this says
it
274.
really is
yeah.
273. I think
Okay.
we threw one out early on. That's probably an earlier document, but it is 273 is our denominator.
Besides bad flashbacks from statistics, this conversation also has me wondering, like, is it reasonable to assume that all the residents who did not answer the survey at all
Mhm.
are happy? And should that be considered, right? I mean, yes, they didn't take the time, but they're still residents. Is that a fair? I mean,
Generally,
obviously
I
they're not
think-
all
I
going
think-
to trend one way.
No,
but
I think we look at it this way, Mike, is that, is the survey population representative of Rollingwood?
yeah, and I'm not sure. I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate mainly.
No, I
but
hear you.
but
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
I think
yeah.
the answer is probably no.
Yeah.
Because I think that you have people that want change are much more likely to
Yeah.
fill out the survey than
Oh,
those that
no,
aren't.
no, don't, if you
Maybe.
dig into it, if you dig into the survey responses, there's plenty of responses
I
of
read
people
a
who
lot.
say, don't change
I'm not
anything.
gonna say I read them
There's
all.
plenty there.
Oh, I know there are. There is.
Plenty,
There is.
you know, but the number of people who are willing to look at things is significantly higher than that. So, I mean, you know,
That's
if
an
you
interesting
really,
question,
if
though,
you've got,
Mike, yeah.
if you've got a lot of skin in this and you think that, you know, that you think that something's wrong with the idea of relooking at property value or at property, building ordinances, you're probably gonna wanna fill that survey out. You're probably gonna wanna get in there and say, you know, I don't like this.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying they'd
You
all
know.
trend one way,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
think that
yeah.
that's there is a, you know, something to consider.
Anyway, we're treating it like that it is representative.
Yeah. Well, I think you have.
Okay.
What other choice do you have?
Exactly. Yeah, it's fair. So this building envelope that I just discussed is going to include exposed foundation restrictions, and we'll talk about that here in a second.
Okay.
Exposed foundation, there's 27 unprompted comments on this. Okay?
From one house.
But,
It's one of my
I mean,
pet
this is
peeves, I know.
organic,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do they all show up in one question, or is it like those would come up in?
You know,
'Cause was there- I
we
didn't
saw,
remember a question about
we
that.
saw comments about particular things spread throughout,
Okay.
all right? It wasn't like one question stimulated, although there are some that are fairly, you know, pretty hot items, pretty hot ticket items. But most of the questions, most of the things that we heard were spread pretty equally throughout. People were saying things in response to a question. You say, I wonder why they said it there. Maybe it
Yeah.
just occurred to them at the time.
Yeah.
It's hard to know. So, anyway, but throughout the survey, we had 27 unprompted comments about foundation exposure, that some outliers, you know, have these giant exposed foundations that people find is not appropriate. And can you do something about those things?
So is the,
Do you mind if
just to drill down a little, is the thinking that like the finished level of the floor cannot be 6 feet high? Because you can cover and you should cover the foundation. I mean, we should require, I think we
Yeah.
do require that it's covered with some finished material, like stone or siding, whatever.
Right.
But
I don't think we
is the
do require that.
limitation?
There's a bunch of them that it's just
We can't
concrete.
anymore. Yeah, they took that out.
Oh, you can't require it by state law anymore?
Well, that's a good
Yeah,
question.
there was a restriction. We used to
On the
have
building
a,
material.
yeah, on building material, there used to be a restriction about the percent of. had
Oh,
either
well, there
be
was a
stone or-
percent of masonry, but I think
Yeah.
you can say that you can't have, like, if you have concrete that you drop the brick lug to grade so that you can, it looks like brick, and you can't actually see where the foundation
I don't think we have
starts.
ever required that though, and I only know that, you know, when I designed the house with Stuart, on a slope lot, I said, I do not want
To see foundation.
to see any of that,
Yeah.
because I'm so annoyed with
So,
the ones
so
I
what's
did.
the intent? Are we going to allow 6 feet of just unfinished concrete?
So
Is that-
what we're saying is that a foundation exposure within public view, essentially street view,
Sure.
can't exceed 6 feet.
6 feet sounds like a lot to me.
That is a lot.
But yeah,
There's a lot of grace in
I
that.
think
There's
you
a
just
lot of
have
grace
to.
in that.
I think that you need more
There are-
specificity around what is 6 feet. I know this is
Yeah,
the draft, but
that's
like,
right. Yeah,
is the
yeah.
6 feet just what I see? Is part of it hidden?
Okay,
You
and then,
know, like,
well, if the next sentence here says, foundation exposure within public view must be screened such that the viewable portion does not exceed 2.5 feet. actually, do I have that right? I think I might have gotten corrected on it. I think that might, no, that's true. That's 2.5 feet, 30 inches, yeah.
Yeah, I had a question here.
Yeah.
What does screen
Yeah,
mean?
that's
Yeah.
what I was
And
wondering.
the screening could be, well, and we'll come up with that, but it'd be, it could be bushes, it could be, some sort of landscape.
That was what I wrote. That
kind
was,
of
I mean, and then
Yeah.
then there's a
You can do
freeze,
something.
and the bushes all
Yeah.
die, and who's gonna go out there and tell them you got to replant? I mean, it
that's
feels like an enforcement problem
See,
to me.
that's why we're here. I
Yeah.
love that question, that's great. And I'll take it back, you're right. Maybe it needs to be something permanent. Maybe it can't be bushes.
I just think, what you see, or what I have a problem with when I see is whether it's stucco house or brick or whatever it is,
They
it
don't try to
stops,
take the
and then
finishes to the
it's
ground,
yeah,
and it's
that
just
goes in a
this-
straight line, and then the
Yep.
foundation at the ground comes like this,
Yeah.
and all of the bottom of it is just the concrete, the plastered concrete, whatever it is.
Right.
Why can't we go down with whatever that material
I
is?
think you can, require, I thought we had that.
I don't think there's a bunch of houses that don't have that, so I assume we didn't.
Not right now, they don't, no.
But
But
can
you
you
could
tell
tell-
them what it?
but you could
maybe
terrace
it's
in front.
whatever you have at
Yeah.
that point. You can pick what you want. We can't tell you whether it can be siding or stone or whatever. But whatever you have, can we make them continue that?
I mean, there's nothing that stops you from building a concrete house, though.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing I come back to is like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think I know some examples that you're thinking of, and I too, they are not to my aesthetic preference. But you could go out and do preformed concrete and make a house out of it, and it could be stark with no windows and effectively look like what these foundations look like. And I think the difference between a city and an HOA is that like we don't really have the ability to make the call on like we don't like how that one looked because it's ugly to us. And so that's my sort of concern on this with the foundation is because why is that a whole lot different?
Yeah, I think maybe that's well stated, kind of what I was getting at. I think the point is not, yes, part of it is the mass of concrete exposed, but perhaps that can be dealt with by requiring whatever the finished material above going within X inches of grade or whatever. But I think what we're trying to avoid is that, you've got this sloping lot and it slopes, down to the street and they want to put their front door 12 feet up so they can have a flat slab instead of stepping it and, gracefully interacting with the public view.
That is exactly
Yeah,
what
or
we're trying
go
to do.
pure and beam
So
with
I
it
think
and do.
I think it's maybe finished floor is something around the
Or
finished
does
level.
do the adjustments to the height potentially eliminate some of that in and of itself? I don't know.
I think you could still have a really bad 35 foot with 8 feet of foundation just staring at the street like over here.
Yep, like over there.
Yeah, that's
It's a
tricky in
consequence
itself.
of the topography of some of
Yeah.
these lots, and you see it most
There's,
glaringly when we
you
have
can-
like
For sure.
aggressively sloped lots.
You can design around topography. That's the point.
Yeah,
I mean, you can
At a
be-
cost,
you can
yeah.
you can do the due diligence and design around topography, or you can be lazy and you just put up a wall and fill it with dirt. You
Well,
can
I don't
do
know
it.
if it's lazy. I think in a lot of cases it's a cost issue.
No, I don't know.
Right,
Building
the
a wall,
more-
and filling it with
I
dirt.
mean, I would-
filling-
I would assume the
that's
more
it.
you
Not-
step
that's
and
not
the more
cheap.
roof
It's
line.
not cheap to do.
A lot of it is just, a lot of people don't want a main entry floor that's a split level
Yeah.
thing and you got to come in and go up. So I think a lot of people will try to chew up that difference outside. So once you get there, it's like, oh, great. Now it's,
I think that's right. I think people, when you're talking about stepping things down, now all of a sudden you've got like all these layers to your home as opposed to, I think that's probably what drives it. But I think there's mitigating things that can be done. Like when you talk about, you put your brick lug down at grade and you step your brick lug. And so the stone comes down with it just like the grade does, and it just looks like
there's
stone.
there's tons of examples of that probably don't offend a single person.
Yeah,
You know,
or you
where
put
it's
in
more than 8
landscaping, you've got tiered beds that follow it down and
Well,
they
every house at the low point of,
But you're making my point whenever you say that, because
Mm-hmm.
now you're not exposing the foundation there. What you're doing is you're putting terracing there. So it's,
Yeah.
you're still putting your door up way high, whatever it is, but you're doing something in front of that that makes it not seem like it's so.
Well,
Yeah.
a permanent bed might be better than plants because,
Yeah.
I mean, I think
you know,
for
I
the,
don't know.
If
But then somebody might say, well,
that's
well,
a
I think
That's a
steel
great-
beds are
but that's a
ugly, you
good
know?
point. Like, if, which I think is probably doable, if you can terrace beds down to lessen that and still be able to have your flat, as long as we can provide, make
They're
sure that
doing
we
some-
allow that, then
Yeah, this house across the street is doing a great job with their terracing and stuff. It's really pretty what they've done out there.
I think what ends up happening is in most cases people do this themselves because, like Tony, when you were looking at the design with Stuart, you were like, I don't want to have to see this for you, right? Because you don't want to come home to your house looking with the
Me, and I didn't want to be that person to other people.
yeah, but like I think for the most part, your own sort of there's a motivation driven by the homeowner.
Yeah, which is why I've been surprised how many of these there are that didn't really do a whole lot to hide it.
Yeah, I know of one for sure, but I haven't been tracking them, so there may be
There's a
more
couple on
now.
Rollingwood Drive, I think. Yeah.
Do we-
Well, I think the sentiment is great. I think that's a tricky one, but
That's
Well,
a
yeah,
tough
well, we have
tough
to-
one to thread.
You know,
but-
there's a lot of
because it's
spaces.
also if you say, okay, you got to do a terrace bed there, so now we're mandating certain landscape.
Well, your point about the
You know.
freeze
Well,
and
you're not mandating, you're just saying if
Not
you-
necessarily,
if you can't conform,
you know,
here's an alternate
yeah.
path for you.
To,
Yeah.
to, build, to terrace it.
If you
yeah.
want it flat and you don't want to step it, well, you
Yeah.
can terrace the front
Yeah.
yard.
There's things you can do. All right.
this is
Um,
fun, isn't it?
Can we move on to setbacks?
You bet.
Okay, here we go.
Please.
Nuance. This is kind of an odd question. When we talked about setbacks, about 66% of the public thought that we have it about right. 23% thought the setbacks were too small, and 11% said that they're too large. And City Council had some trouble with. We want to do some things here to setbacks that isn't necessarily what the public had suggested. But we're allowed to do that. You know, we're allowed to look at the issues with regard to how a house sits on a lot and change some of the dimensions of things and make the recommendation. We can do that. And you guys may shoot it down, but this is where we're going with it right now. You know, as you know, the side yard setbacks are currently something like 10 feet on one, 10, 15 on the other, depending on who did
25.
what
Well, it's
first.
25. It could be
25
12 and a
feet.
half and 12 and a half.
It's,
yeah.
well, we haven't done 12 and a half, 12 and a half. It is 10 and 20, 10 and 15 the way it's written right now.
It's a minimum of
No, it's a
10,
minimum-
and,
A
and
minimum
it has
of
to add up
10
to
and a total of
25.
25. So
Yeah,
you
you
could have
can
12
do-
and a half and 12 and a half, or you can have 13 and 12
Yep.
in the code currently.
That's right, but, okay.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, so what we're suggesting, that we change that setback to 15 feet, straight up to the property line. So the setback is 15 feet per side. It's not 10 feet on one or 12 and a half or any of that. We thought we'd go for just a straight 15-foot side yard setback.
Have you guys thought about how many houses don't comply with this?
You know,
I
and,
mean,
and,
there's a
yeah,
zillion
yeah,
of them.
nonconformance.
Like almost all.
We've kind of dismissed nonconformance.
But okay, I get that because there's you know we're trying to make certain things non-conforming for sure. That's how we
Yeah.
got here. But I mean, I think if 66% of the community said they're about right,
Plus another
I-
11 that thought they were
Too big.
like too much already.
so yeah. So, but I believe that the people that think they're about right. I know we did a good job of informing and all that, but
Mhm.
most people live in a house with a 10-foot setback that they feel is adequate. I believe. And that's a pretty big setback for these size lots already.
Okay.
I feel like, but
Well, some of the discussion got to fire protection, okay? And we got, you know, our insurance rates are based.
I didn't
to
hear
some
what you said.
extent-
Fire protection?
Yeah.
Okay.
Our insurance rates are based to some extent on the distance between houses. We don't have to worry about that. If you get into it, if the setbacks are 5 feet or less, then you're likely to see insurance rates go up because there's a greater danger of fire for houses that are so close together, okay? We don't have to worry about that, the 10 feet, the 12 and a half feet, the 10, 15 feet. That gets us enough distance that insurance isn't a thing. But we checked with Westlake Fire Department on all of this to make sure that we knew what we were talking about, all right? And I talked to Fire Marshal Mike Lacy and told him that we were kicking around the idea of changing the things from 10 feet to 15, and he was delighted. He thought, well, that's really good. We just had our fire up on Pickwick. No other houses got affected, but it got pretty close. You know, and we're talking about 10-foot setbacks up there. You know, like I said, we know that this isn't necessarily publicly supported, but we haven't had an opportunity to make our case either. And so we thought that if we were gonna change it at all, we'd go for 15 and then see how much pushback there would be. It's just that.
Yeah, I watched the city council meeting. I heard a couple people respond to that one, and it was kind of consistent with when I went through this stuff the first time was, you know, I think the whole survey was basically, first, let's figure out if people think we got a problem that we need to solve or not. And I think we got feedback that there's a number of issues that need to be addressed. And while I completely agree, you know, this wasn't taking a vote that we're going to enforce based on the community's vote. And within all these, there's nuance, right? Somebody can say, yeah, they're too high. Well, somebody's got to figure out how to solve that, right? And we weren't going to get that solved by the vote, the feedback. So I think where there's, you know, 52, 48, whatever, you know, I think there's, that's where the experts who have donated their time or they're becoming experts, to me, have sort of the latitude to get in and try to create solutions. This one gave me a little bit of trouble, being perfectly honest, is just, you know, I've been on this thing for, I think the longest of anyone here, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. You know, when I first got on, I don't know, every year or so, you know, we've had 1 or 2 people from city council come in and talk about setbacks. And since I've been on this commission with people changing constantly, there's never been any engagement from planning and zoning to that regard with the suggestions. It could be different this time, and I'm certainly open to, you know, y'all doing what you see fit. That's what y'all were put on there to do. This one was the one that jumped out as me as pitchfork potential.
Yeah, it might be,
Yeah.
might be.
Yeah, I think that I've never liked our setback ordinance anyways. It feels like the first person in gets more rights. So I think I'd like to see that part of it go away, but I actually do kind of like the 25-foot total between the two, especially if we do some things with a tent, which will also help, right? All of that helps. And because I think you're obviously we're gonna get more restrictive, but I do think we have mostly good actors here.
Yes.
I mean, I think, and that's something to keep in mind. And I think you want to give people that flexibility because, I mean, a tree or this or that, most of the people are going to move the house around and preserve that setback in the best way.
Right.
Right. And
Most,
the more you,
yeah.
the
Yeah.
vast majority. And so the more you start to constrain them and take away the flexibility, then you just roll into more unintended consequences. So I don't know. I think I'd like to see it revised, but I think it works good, except for if your neighbor gets in early and he builds to the side and you want to build closer, you want to build 10 feet there, you're shaking your head. We don't do that anymore.
No, if,
They can both,
You could both be 10, right?
you can both be
yeah,
10.
both do 10 if you wanted.
Yeah. It's not, it's not,
Oh,
it's
okay.
not,
Your neighbor's
it's not
10, you don't have to do
25 with your
15,
neighbor,
yeah.
it's 25 total
Yeah.
between your two sides.
Then leave it. All right. Okay.
My, sorry,
I-
were you,
I'm done.
I was just gonna add my 2 cents on this. I think it's kind of consistent with a lot of what you guys said, so I won't repeat it. I think when, and I don't know which version of your denominator, but like if less than a quarter of the respondents, is
Yeah.
that what it is, are saying that they think like it's too small and needs to be increased, that gives me pause for us deciding that we're going to kind of go past that, you know, because that's a pretty big difference, right? That's like less than, I mean, that's less than a quarter. And then you couple that with what I would think is probably the counter to that, which is that I would guess 75% of people's homes have a side setback less than 15. And I know we're not thinking about nonconformance necessarily, because like that's part of why we're here, is to talk about ones that aren't conforming to some of these restrictions. But that's a lot of homes that you wouldn't be able to build under a new regime like this. And so that would make me really concerned that we've dramatically changed the rules. You know, I don't have as much problem when we're talking about, look, it's always been 35 feet. Turns out there was a loophole, or we're calling it a loophole, but there's a way to calculate 35 feet that dramatically feels different from the rest of the character of the homes in the neighborhood. And we need to make sure we don't let that happen. And I think that's what you see in those other questions, is people reacting to that. It's different though when it's like, for many, many years and decades, in fact, people have been using the same rule and building homes according to that. Now all of a sudden we're going to say like, yeah, we're just throwing that all out. That seems like a big change to me.
I think that our intent in all this is that it's not necessarily the distance from the street or the distance between houses, but what people see as buildings that are too large, how do you accommodate changing the rules so that you have houses whose character is appropriate for the lots that they're sitting on? And managing the setbacks is one way of doing that. That's all. It's just one other tool in the box that says, okay, well, if we do this, if we restrain it this way, we're going to get more distance between houses. And that's going to make the houses that are on the lots, they may still be just as big as they ever were, but they won't seem as big as they were.
I would actually argue that
think
they're going
you're
to seem bigger.
I think you're going to get the opposite, because you're going to have less area to spread out, so you have to go up. And I think some of these lots that are narrow and deep, you're taking a pretty significant part of buildable area away, and it's just going to go to the second floor.
And I actually I think one way you can do that if you weren't doing setbacks is tenting or building envelope, which we didn't talk a lot about, but that's always been my fear. Is like, we're talking about the bad actors, right? Well, the bad actors can still come in after we do all of whatever we do, and the whole reason they're bad actors is because they're trying to maximize the square footage. So presumably they're going to do that under whatever these new parameters are. And maybe you can fix some of that with height at the setback. But absent that, I think if you just change the setbacks right now, you're going to have a house with a smaller footprint going just as tall, which is going to have the appearance of taller. And I don't know. I think that's a tough one.
Well, I heard, a couple of minutes ago, I heard Mike say that he liked the idea of houses being at least 25 feet apart. He's not that crazy about the 10 and 15-foot rule or whatever. But without being crazy about it, what would you prefer? Would 12 and a half and 12 and a half be an
No,
answer?
I like and excuse my ignorance on how we apply it, but I like the concept that you have a little flexibility to work around, whether it's topography, a tree, a view,
Yeah,
or
right.
whatever. But you're gonna get, half the time, if we had all new construction, you're gonna get 25 feet, give or take, half the time. And I think that's I think that's plenty. I don't think you get to setbacks bigger than 10 feet in like city of Austin until the lots are an acre or so. Your SF5 or whatever that is, but lots this size have 5 foot setbacks, maybe
Okay.
7.5.
All right. I'll take this message back.
Okay.
It's fine. Still on setbacks here. We're recommending that we reduce the street-facing corner lot side yard to 20 feet.
Yeah, I'd be interested in the background there, because that wasn't a part of the survey, so I'm just curious where that originated from.
It's just been a lot of in
I
the
was wondering if
survey-
there
in
were
the survey- in the-
comments that were made.
In the survey, a lot of we had the questions that say, are the front yards too large, too small, side yards too large, too small, backyards too large, too small? Okay. And we did have a number of people that had come back who have corner lots and said, well, it's not fair to me to have this restriction that says that I can't build closer to the street, or I have to have the same distance between the side yard and the street as I do in my front yard in the street. You know, I have to do the same thing. So my buildable area is significantly reduced just by virtue of my being in a corner lot. The lot next to me is the same size, and they get to build, I don't. Is that right?
It was that way when they bought it, but
I disagree.
I
think you should keep
fundamentally-
it at 30
yeah.
feet.
I actually went, briefly owned a corner lot that I was thinking about building on, and figured that out and decided not to move forward because I couldn't.
It creates a, yeah,
My concern, and they raised it at city council, is, I think the reason, I'm not gonna pretend to know the reason, but one of the likely reasons that exists is because of the line of houses, when you look at it that way. And
because if you turn that
I
corner.
think if you're gonna try to do something like this, I think you need to really kind of look at every single corner lot now and look at how that might be impacted and whether that would create weird looking situations.
Well, I think the way the code is, I mean, maybe it could be cleaned up a little, but I think it accomplishes, you wanna have ideally, I think streets look better when the built environment starts along the same plane, right? And I think when you turn a corner and it's like, oh, great, and then this juts out, and then all the other houses are set back, it feels and looks bad. So I think if we're gonna, give anything, maybe it's 5 feet, but I think the way it currently reads is if it's only 2 lots back to back, so there is no front door there, well, then you're probably gonna get it on both and it feels good. But if you've got a street that's 10 houses long between corners and the corners can stick out an extra 10 feet,
It's gonna feel
just
weird.
weird.
Yeah.
And like Tony said,
We've got some weird
These there-
blocks though. Like that's,
there's some weird blocks, but I
It-
don't
it-
know.
Like-
To me, I don't think that's if we're trying to look at foundations from the street and things like that, those are details.
Mm-hmm.
To me, this is a much more impactful thing than, it being 10 feet closer means a hell of a lot more to me than
Particularly if it's going up
how
35
much
feet.
concrete is exposed and are the bushes dead.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. Like I actually, in terms of building height, my plan has always been to generally support the community input. I actually favored my comments where I like some sort of quote unquote bonus for slope, whether that's 5 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet, whatever. I favored lowering the height to 30 feet because I think that when you get these heavily sloped ones that people complain about, I'm not sure that what we're doing is going to change that dynamic. Like everybody points to the one in the corner of Riley and Rollingwood and the people that sit below and have this giant house looming over them. If you go sit and look at that one, if you cut 10 feet off of that house at the top, it's still a giant house looming over them because the slope is so dramatic. So I think there's a lot of those that even dramatically changing height doesn't really solve that general theme. I actually have come to have more issues with the 35-foot houses on flat lots. And, there's one on Rollingwood Drive near the park that I keep looking at. And I'm like, surely that can't be 10 feet of,
topo.
what's the buffer, the city-owned buffer at the front?
Right away.
Oh, right
So
away.
I can't believe that can be 10 feet of right-of-way and another 30 feet. But I presume it must be because it got approved. But it's just the style of house they built is one consistent
brick.
wall.
Yeah.
all the way across the front of the house, going straight up to probably 30 to 35 feet. And to me, that's kind of more offensive than some of the big ones on the slopes. And I think, you'll, if we start shrinking things, you probably wind up with more of that effect in some areas. And if you go to 20 feet on a corner, you might have something like that, going all the way, if it's a flat lot, going all the way around the L. I don't know. Just thinking out loud. But anyway, I say all that, I was,
But I think if you make
my opinion on the height was not consistent
Are
with
we,
everyone
are we
else's.
back on height now?
No,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
So if you made it 20 feet, do you feel like you still would not have the huge wall? I think you'd have the exact same wall. It would just be at 20 feet.
That's
instead
what I
of
mean.
30,
Yeah.
Like I think it's,
And
still,
if
it's
you
still going to be right there.
And,
Well,
and
yeah,
if you've
well,
then shrunk the setback
this
on the other
side,
side.
Yeah, but there'll be other mitigating,
Yeah, and maybe the tent
know,
solves some of
we
that.
put this envelope around things and say, it's,
I think the building line issue along a street is a good point as to where I'd think about this adjustment on the corner lot thing. That could make a big difference.
Maybe a good relevant example is like no professional subdivision developer today
yeah.
would ever do that, ever. Like you never go find a subdivision where the building setback doesn't turn a corner and stay the exact same. I don't think you can find one.
Yeah.
So, and that's a lot of insight into what the community thinks of that move. Or
Okay.
The professional building community.
All
I
right.
think I remember one coming up. There is some sort of rule where if it's two back to back.
If it's two back to back
Yeah.
and that's
I
the
remember
whole
that coming.
block,
That's
then
right.
you can go to 20 feet. So we might have to keep that. I don't know, but
Did that come in the
but
context of
that's
variance, or-
I
Yeah,
feel a
it
little
came up
better
on
about
one.
that because at least that's just a short little block and it feels good, right?
Yeah.
Like that's okay.
Right.
It feels like the same line.
Yeah.
I think that came up too. It's like there's a replat or a variance
Mhm.
or a combination of a
replat.
replat and a
What do you
variance.
think?
Well, I'm just saying it was such an exceptional circumstance that it met the requirements for a variance, which, or whatever statute it came up under or rule, and I don't think that's the normal.
Yeah, I don't think there's many of those.
Well.
I was
but
curious on the 5 feet of front yard setback trade. Is that
Yeah, we were
is
just
that
get-
is that
this actually,
getting more in the making it greater in the front, or you're saying like as opposed to 30,
well,
you go to
here's-
25?
these are things that came out of comments in the survey. Some people were saying, I wish I had more backyard. I wish I had less front yard. I don't know why our setbacks are so great. All I end up doing is planting grass and watering it. That's all I get out of it. It's purely aesthetic. What would be nice is if I could have the same size house, but I could have a bigger backyard. And it's okay. That's where it says explore. What if we don't even know how to do this, but what if we started talking about, well, maybe our front yard setbacks are too large in some cases. And maybe we ought to be able to give somebody grace and say, well, yeah, you can have a bigger backyard, as long as you have the same building footprint, regardless. You're just moving your building, you have a certain size building, you're moving it around on your lot. So
It's kind of
not
what we do
so
on the side a
different
little
from
bit.
what Mike
Yeah, on the
was saying
side.
about,
yeah.
well, you're trying to accommodate for a tree, or you're trying to do this, you got some flexibility, and being able to take the thing and move it around. And for 5 feet, so what? But,
I
but
would
it
say
did
if you
come up, and
explore
it came
that,
from
yeah.
more than one person. I mean, it was an we hadn't even ever thought about it. And it wasn't like there were a lot of comments, but maybe 5 suggested this. I would really like to be able to get a little less front yard, a little more backyard, if I could do it. All right.
I think
I
to
mean,
the
I think
extent you explore that, I think you'd have to, well, one, you get the lining up potential issue, but I would think you'd also, or I would say, because of what I just brought up with that house that's just at 30 feet and it feels to me like it's right on the street, is I think you'd have to explore some way. If you
Yeah.
get any sort of bonus 5 feet, it has to be all one story or something like
I
that.
understand. I don't know that every street has the 10-foot right-of-way in Rolling Wood. I know my street does, but I don't know that
I don't know
every
either.
other
They
street
don't-
does.
they don't all.
And if you've got the 10, in my own case, and this isn't about me, but in my own case, I'm on a corner lot, and we do have the 10-foot right-of-way, not only on our front street, but on our side street, which is Rolling Wood Drive. And so in both cases, the distance between my house, the allowable distance between my house and the curb is 40 feet. And
Wow.
40 feet's quite a bit. You know, so if you were talking about changing side yards, you're saying, okay, well, I'm just gonna get my 10 feet back. Just
Maybe,
that's all I
maybe some
want.
of it too is
That's all I want, is 10
if you
foot
have
back.
a right of way,
Yeah.
so you already have a required buffer, you know, maybe that could enter into the discussion.
Maybe that could, if the right of way is there, you know, if it's been platted.
So I will
that
say
way.
on the side,
Yeah.
on the side lot, you know,
Yeah.
if you've got 10 foot of right of way and you gotta do 30 and you're pushing back 40,
Yeah.
that kinda sucks.
I don't know.
Well, we're calling
mean-
it 30 and 40. I mean, it's really just what it kind of already is. Like,
Yeah.
I remember like getting all confused about this because when we go out there and there's actually the 10-foot right of way plus the 30, and I go, this is actually 40.
Yeah.
But like, it all just, I think the point is it all kind of looks the same and we've all been dealing with it.
Well, you guys probably go by my house all the time because I'm on Rolling Wood Drive, and it just take
But
a
under
look.
25 miles
What's
per
your
hour
side-
though.
What is your side setback? Your 30-foot side setback?
30-foot side setback.
Lined up with the
Plus
houses next to you?
Plus 10 feet.
right away.
Looks great. Looks great. Love it.
Oh, you haven't seen my yard then?
Well, I've seen your yard. I gave you my landscape contact, didn't I?
Anyway, but it is. It's. I mean, it's a sizable piece of property on the side of my house that I can't do anything with, and again, it's not about me. I don't care. I already built my house. I'm done. But it makes me wonder about other people who are saying it. And I say, well, yeah, you got a point.
Yeah, I've
I'm
seen some
taking
people
your-
do some things with their front yard, which I think is,
Yeah.
a good answer too.
Yeah.
You know, if we don't get overly restrictive with what you can do, whether it's a putting green or fire
Yeah,
pit or whatever. I
Right.
don't know.
May I? Yeah, a sports court.
Yeah,
Put in a
pickleball.
front yard fence and
Front yard pickleball.
So may I?
Front yard
May I say
pickleball.
that this conversation is actually very good. This is very useful what we're doing here. Let's see, and explore. We also heard from people who say the fact that I can't put a swimming pool in any part of the setback is a difficulty for me. What's the point? Why is that? Why can't I use some of this setback property to put a swimming pool in? Right now, you're allowed to have your coping go into the setback, but you're not allowed to have the pool itself. It has to stop right there at the setback line. We thought, well, yeah, maybe we should explore that. Why, if in fact, it's kind of going back to the question or the statement above there, is just that some people are saying, I'd like to get more utility out of my backyard, but I'm not allowed. And,
Yeah, I'd be in favor of taking that to like almost zero.
yeah,
I mean,
if we're
it's-
careful
there's
Yeah, I
about
didn't
what-
have much of a problem.
We're careful about what the pool means and it's not
Well,
like an
there's-
elevated thing with a bunch of
Yeah.
Well, but there's no
Structure.
there's no different. I mean, you can use your backyard right up to the fence line, throwing darts, shooting arrows.
I've got
doing
my-
all sorts of stuff, right?
I've got my
Making noise.
trampoline on the fence.
So that is just as invasive to a neighbor as a pool.
Trampoline's
there's
more, yeah.
zero difference, and I think then you can, maybe that makes us feel better about not letting these houses get closer to the street because I think that is a silly restriction.
okay.
I know it's come up in the past I
think-
don't remember when it came up, and I don't remember who it was, whether it was council or citizen or whatever. There are some people certainly that feel strongly about it, and it's generally noise that's been cited, and I've always kind of scratched my head at that. I've got a fire pit that's in that space, and granted, we don't sit
Noise?
around and talk a lot at it, but there's plenty of other ways you can create noise beyond.
well, but the
Pool.
10 feet difference is not going
Yeah.
to change how much noise is generated.
Yeah, I mean, if my neighbor whose pool is close to the backyard, mine is too, if they've got a bunch of people in the pool, I'm gonna hear it, whether they're 10 feet or 5 feet or whatever.
I think that sounds like a good one. I have a call with a client at 8 o'clock, so
We can move along. I'd like to.
yeah, but I think that's a good point.
Okay, so I'm not feeling as much pushback on that particular item as I've heard on a number of
I
others.
think we should be a lot more generous, frankly, unless there's some real
Impact
valid
on the
reason.
neighbor.
The
Yeah.
only thing I would say, devil's advocate, is, you know, we have community feedback, we have these houses getting bigger and bigger, and, you know, is that gonna incentivize bigger, because now I can shove my pool back there, so I can even build a bigger house.
Well, let's just think about, you know, someone who's just bought a house and they've built it, you know, to the setback line or whatever, some place that gets close to the setback line, and they say, well, I'd like to put a pool in, but I can't, because it's in the setback. I mean, it's not necessarily whenever new construction is in, it might be the house that you bought and thought you'd be
Yeah.
able to put a swimming pool in the backyard.
Well, yeah, I know somebody personally who
You
had
can't
trouble
do
with
it.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
that versatility might also, I mean, it may even preserve existing housing stock to some extent, because a
Yeah.
lot of these were never built with pools in mind, and it's like, oh, great, now I have room. Oh, great, I'll fix this house up.
I'm
Whatever.
gonna take that back as a maybe. All right, driveways.
Yeah, I don't know about going all the way,
this-
but
okay.
more would be.
We had 58%, you know, we asked the question about whether or not a driveway that connected two streets on a corner lot, was that okay? Right now, the ordinance says you're not allowed to do that. And 58% of the people said, yeah, why not?
Planning and zoning, I don't remember if y'all were on it, we granted one variance, on the corner of Rollingwood and Ridgewood by my house.
I was on that time.
Yeah.
It was for safety reasons, I believe, right?
Yeah, yes.
There's a little visibility,
There's-
because it's right near the heavily trapficked corner.
So they had
Yeah.
you know, their garage is on the side of the house, and they wanted to build a circle drive in the front. Teenage drivers, nowhere to park. It's hard to park on Rollingwood Drive. I'm gonna have that problem here pretty soon. And, you know, I had a driveway and I made a circle, so I'm like, what does it matter if he's got another point of access around the corner? Anyway, we approved that, but there were some people that felt strongly against it, and I think the most commonly cited thing was the more curb cuts there are, we're creating more pedestrian car interaction points. And I disagree with that. I think the more you have, the safer they can be. That's what most people are doing it for. But that was the argument. But this one, yeah, I feel like.
This one actually felt like a slam dunk to me, like.
Yeah, there was also people
It
who
just
always talked
sounded
about that.
easy.
There's one on like Vale, and it said teenagers would cut through it. You know,
Yeah,
there was not a
I'm-
car parked there, and I'm like, God, it doesn't feel like it's probably a very common problem to me.
On a bike, maybe, but not on a.
Yeah.
Like,
I cut through that one on my bike, but I'm maybe I'm an outlier, but I disagree. I think it looks. I don't think the look is bad. I think it does get used for cut through. You know, a driveway to me is for accessing a garage, and no garage exists on the corner of a house, generally speaking. And these lots are big enough. And I think we allow 3 driveways now, so you could literally have a cut through. And then a whole other, I think it's too much, too many driveways. I think, you know, I think
the
2
current
is
trend-
plenty. 3 is too much, and I think cutting through it's like, just imagine if every corner you walk to was if everyone took advantage of that, every corner you walk to has a driveway cutting through. I don't think that's a good look.
the current trend is to have a garage on each side.
Each side, or one low, one high. This is
If
true.
you want to shoot for at least 4 to 6 car garage.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know if you.
I didn't know we were in the accommodation
We weren't,
committee.
we weren't.
It's only because we're so environmentally conscious. It's all electric vehicles that are being parked
Oh.
in there. Golf carts,
E-bike
bikes.
parking,
Naturally.
e-bike
Yeah.
parking.
Naturally.
I don't know.
That is the trend.
That just.
All right, moving along.
Well, I've always felt I've got a circle drive on Rollingwood, and I don't know what I would do without it. But I also only have 2 curb cuts, not 3.
Good. All right, moving along, fences, we asked based on what we heard from the public, you know, a maximum feet, we don't, currently, there is no ordinance that has a maximum fence height. And we're suggesting that it should be 8 feet unless the Board of Adjustment grants a special exception.
Love it.
That's it, just that. And
I think, can we get a little more persnickety about I mean, I don't somewhat type of fence, like, you know, are there certain materials that are allowed, like brick, stone, wood? Are there certain materials that are not allowed, like can you build a cinder block fence? You know, is that okay?
AKA a wall.
We used to have them in
Yeah,
Midland.
wall, like can
In
you build
Midland,
a-
they were called
But who's gonna want
fences.
that if you don't finish it?
If it-
I got one in the
Everybody,
store.
everybody
I don't
in
know if it's gonna
Midland
be
had a
finished, but-
cement fence in their backyard. And it was because it was so windy there that a regular fence, you know, made of cedar, wouldn't stand up very long. Get blown down.
Sure, yeah, but so I think the materiality is important,
Yeah.
and I think that if it's a masonry fence, then also like the design and the engineering aspect of it becomes important.
I do wonder on the slope if you have sort of like the building height thing, you know, is it 8 feet from every single point? Cause it's not that easy to,
I think it's 8 feet max. I mean, the city of Austin's 8 feet max any point. I believe. Maybe you
So
get
on a
six-
slope,
get
what do you
6
do?
inches. I think you get a bonus 6 inches on a slope, so you step it,
yeah, I'm saying you step
or
it,
you
but
or
so
you
you
slope
could be,
or you slope the top.
you know.
Do we have fences that have reached like the
Yeah.
level
Yes.
of public discourse?
Yeah, we've got fences that are at least 10 feet.
I wasn't saying that
Or
to
more.
suggest that there wasn't.
I have no
I'm
idea
not
either. I
aware.
hadn't come up in planning
You
and
know,
zoning
I-
since I've been on.
You know, if you look at our side window in the house down the street here, you can see they've got an RV in their backyard, big one. And they've got about a 10-foot fence that covers most of it up. And I think the fence is lovely, much lovelier than the RV, you know, so.
Well, that
it
was
doesn't- it
that was
doesn't
the part
bother
I
me.
was
And if
kind of
it-
thinking
They went to the
about
Board of
is-
Adjustment and got a variance, they could put their 10-foot fence up there and cover up their RV, I'd be, why not?
Yeah, and I don't know legally if can you tie it to like neighbor consent, something
Well,
like that.
We kick that around a lot, and whether or not what happens in those cases, and we're trying to avoid it because some neighbor becomes the bad guy whenever they say no. And in the spirit of, you know, community, we don't want to get that. We don't want to get into, as you can do this as long as all of your neighbors agree that you can do it. So we need to put rules in there that are enforced by the city.
My
They
question
can
was,
come
if you go to
to
board of,
BOA.
yeah, if you have to go to Board of Adjustment, which I've never done, my understanding is very, you know, there's the category is very high
Or you have
bar.
to have a real-
Hardship. I'm not sure that there's anybody who's gonna be able to prove a hardship to get a taller fence. So my only question was, fine, if 8 feet's what everybody wants, but to the extent you're getting a special exception, could we have that special exception be done by planning and zoning with confirmation from council? Is it, cause that's a different variance bar as opposed, like I don't know the nuance, but we were able to do that driveway as an example. It didn't have to go to B of A or BOA.
We could,
So
Just
that
to
would be my
make it-
thought is
make
if
it
you,
a
if you
lower
make it,
bar,
yeah, make it a
more-
lower
more
bar,
aesthetic.
but it's gonna be 2 public meetings, it's gotta go through, the neighbors can come up, maybe you add
I'll tell you
some
what,
neighbor
I think
thing.
that's like Texas state local governance restrictions that put variances to city code before Board of Adjustment
Maybe
under
so.
certain
Well, there is
criteria.
You're right.
Yeah,
I don't
You're
think
right.
we can.
yeah, that's
We
right.
can.
But how
create
is
a
that
sep-
different on the driveway than
That
how could
was
we
a
do that?
plat. For some reason, that's like a platting thing, not a
Yeah.
or whatever section that's in is not under the same section. It's like section 4. I don't know.
Well, I guess the question is the fence
We
in
have a
that or
city
not.
attorney. Maybe
Anyway,
he
yeah,
wants
maybe-
to
maybe-
weigh
maybe
in,
then,
but
yeah.
I do
Here's-
think like I know there's a local government code or state, and that's language is pretty much mirrored by the Board of Adjustments criteria.
Well, I guess my point is if it's Board of Adjustment, special exception, that's fine. I think from a practical standpoint, that means it'll never happen, and
Yeah.
maybe that's okay.
If they're following the criteria, the right,
Yeah,
right, yeah.
then maybe
Yeah,
that's okay. If it's in the section that would allow
Yeah.
us to look, you know, if you have 2 different boards that would have to approve it with public discourse.
I should mention, and I hadn't, that all of these recommendations, as we were making them or writing them down, we were reviewing them with Bryce Cox, who's, you know, part of our
Yep.
legal team, you know, to make sure that where we were going with them was doable and legal. And I think to your point, I think that, I think it is a BOA thing. Now, what do you do with our BOA? You know, that might be another thing, you know, what constitutes a hardship? I know that the state does provide hardship descriptions, but I don't know that you can't soften that somehow.
I don't know. I think that BOA is really rigid in how it has to be.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't-
if we
The
had,
fences, I
if
don't
it could
really
come
care
to us,
one way
I'd
or
love
the
it.
other.
If it could come to us, I'd love it. I think it'd be great.
Well-
Well, it
Yeah.
might be worth investigating if you can qualify like what a hardship is, like visibility into the house from a neighbor, or like
Exactly.
maybe a few things that are
You know,
like, okay, yeah, we get it. If it was 2 feet higher, they can't see into
The
the living
easy
room.
thing the easy thing to envision on
Or
a
headlights
greater
coming
than
in,
8-foot fence is 2 houses, 2 yards that are sloping down into a valley. And both of them can easily see across that fence. There's really no privacy afforded by the fence at all. You say, well, why can't we just have a taller fence? And we both agree that we want to do this. We want to have a 12-foot fence because we don't want to look in each other's back windows.
But that's not a hardship. I think a hardship
Yeah.
has to like productive use of the property
Yeah.
or some.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, see, I think that would be a good case to come make to us and then to city council
All right.
if it were allowed. by
Okay, we gotta
law.
move along, we have to move along. All right, trees got 75% of a thumbs up, people love trees. We believe that
That's
the
like
tree
saying, do
ordinance.
you like nature, though? That's
Yeah,
kind
it is.
of
It really is. But,
that's a
yeah.
loaded question.
Except that 40% said
But,
no.
but we know.
No, that's no, the
That's
tree
the
ordinance is not
ordinance.
doing enough. Yeah.
Oh,
We know
oh.
that our current code does not have a heritage tree definition in it. And so we believe that we need to put a heritage tree definition out there that is one that is 24 inches at 4.5 feet. That's wrong, what I've written there. 4.5 feet.
protected at all costs,
I'm sorry, the what?
and that tree cannot be removed.
That tree cannot be removed without approval from city council.
Can they do that? And that doesn't have to go to BOA?
I
guess
think
trees
I
are
think they
different than
can, yeah.
zoning.
They,
code.
nobody complained whenever I put this in front of city council. They kind of, yeah, okay, got it. So.
Did we put that specific question out for survey? I don't think we did. Are you in favor of a
We got a lot-
Are you in favor of an unremovable tree in any circumstance?
No, we did not put that question in. But we did get a lot of feedback on the tree issues. You know, we did get a lot of people saying a lot of things. It was probably the most popular thing to write comments about.
No, I think we have. I mean, I feel like we absolutely need to do more.
Yeah.
Um,
Our current is a little weak. And,
it's a little weak. I think that
Well, it was hard. We had none, and they wanted to put something in. There were some people opposed that. I
so
think
we
they
have
had
a
to come in,
subcommittee right
maybe
now that is
tiptoe in.
looking at it.
yeah.
They're charged with looking at the tree ordinance and making recommendations for changing it.
I think my unsolicited feedback would be that certainly out in a setback, yeah, 100%. Like you protect the heritage trees, maybe even smaller, right? Maybe you take like you can't remove a tree in a setback over X. I think I hate to see us go the city of Austin way where it becomes political. I think you can make it, say you have a huge tree in the middle of the lot, right? That's the scenario that everyone, is the worst case. Well, the only person that benefits from that tree is the lot owner. And you completely inhibit their development of that reasonable development of the property because of that tree. If yes, they can go to council, but then you politicize it and we know how that goes. So I think maybe a different strategy, but there's all sorts of gray, right? Well, the tree's here. I think you could work around it. I can't work around it, right? And you get that dance, which is the hard part. But I think if you make it where the big trees have to be replaced with big trees, require a minimum, require a 12-inch caliper. I mean, that's a $50,000 tree or something, right?
Easily, yeah.
So make it expensive, but possible, because then I think you end up with those trees in a place like closer to the right of way that the public can appreciate. I don't think most people are not going to go butcher that kind of tree in the right of way. They're going to do it because they have to and they have no other choice oftentimes. And I think sometimes we might benefit if we just,
You think
tighten it
that
up
is,
to get what we
you
want.
do believe that's possible though?
What?
A 12-inch diameter.
Yeah, you can buy 12-inch trees
Can you?
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They come in on big trucks.
they come in on huge trucks. They're incredibly expensive.
Do they live? I've heard
They live
they do.
great.
Okay.
Um,
I guess
Yeah.
I've heard, I had some commercial developers back in the day moving heritage trees.
well, I mean, we've had
That,
people
that was
move
like
trees.
50-50 as to whether it would survive the move.
Moving
Moving
a
a tree,
heritage
yeah.
tree, which we've had some folks do.
Yeah.
I think they're actually really good at that now. Like it depends on soil and stuff, but yeah, these are farm grown trees that they spade them out of soil and they've restricted roots and they warranty them. When you're spending $50,000 on a tree, they're giving you a warranty.
Yeah. I'll take that back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many, I agree with, as you look at this, trying to document them, I don't know how you do that, how easy or difficult, but, I don't know.
I
Are
don't
there
think
any
they're-
that are truly in
I'll-
the middle at this point?
Well, I think the
or is
city
it,
of
you know,
Austin
There's
is-
there's probably not more than 25 of them in Rowanwood.
Really?
Yeah.
don't-
Heritage trees, 24 inches at
24
4.5
inch.
feet. 20, that's,
I guess it's more like that.
Yeah, there's
Super.
gotta there's like
Mm.
there's gotta be like 3 right by my house. But okay.
I wonder.
We're gonna be
Well, I
keeping
know
an
there's
eye on if
one,
you try
for
to take
sure.
those
It's like
out.
a-
Then
it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, they're around, yeah, but I don't think they're that many.
yeah.
They're special cases.
I mean, yeah,
Yes, it
generally,
does. Yeah.
I think we do way,
Yeah.
way too little with the setback
Yeah.
stuff. And the other thing that concerned me is heritage tree, even in a setback, when you get into critical root zone, you would know better than me. I have no experience with it, but that seemed challenging. I mean, a big tree's got to have a big root zone, and so if you have one in the setback, you're charged with protecting, and you can have no excavation through its root zone. How restrictive is that to the side of your house? That was a question I had. And how do you? I mean, does somebody come document the root zone and the building officials reviewing
Well,
that? I don't know.
there's a lot of discussion. Our current ordinance has city arborist mentioned, I think, 17 times in it.
Who's that?
Yeah.
Actually,
Ashley. She's the
actually, I said, someone is training to become an arborist that's on staff right now.
Awesome. Hey.
There you go.
I almost, well, off
I-
topic,
you
but I
know-
almost think we should have any tree trimming has to be done by a certified arborist too. But I do that just because I want to, but I don't find that it adds that much cost, and I feel like it's got to be
I think
beneficial. But
you're saying you want to restrict the only tree trimming can only be done by a certified arborist.
yeah,
I can't trim my own trees.
I don't like when we tell homeowners they can't do their own work if they want to.
maybe that's part of my flaw is it doesn't occur to me to do any work at my own house, so that part doesn't.
With your circle
I would do-
drive, so that you can have your people
I would trim
come
this tree, but
take
it's
care
against
of
the
your-
law.
I've got a
Park 2 lawn
I've got
trucks
a-
in my circle drive.
I've got a replacement battery for my
I don't want to be arrested
for my
in
alarm
front of my
system right
children.
now. It's just sitting
I
there
am not
staring
going
at
to
me.
crawl up in my trees, but
All
I
right.
know that there are people that are
No.
going to feel like
All right.
you're going to make me hire somebody.
Let's move on.
I'm
please.
just oak wilt and all that.
Okay, lighting, there seemed to be a lot of interest, although I don't think a great deal of understanding about what it was we were asking about. But we do have a subcommittee that is about to start looking at it. What we've decided to do is the commercial corridor is coming up with a set of lighting ordinances. I just got a peek at that this week, Monday, for the first time. And they have asked, and I agree, that we use their work as a starting point for anything we do with regard to lighting.
Yep.
We'll probably be looking at some of their stuff on
Dark sky stuff.
impervious cover and some other things as well. But I just got a look at that. The subcommittee has got to pick that up and decide whether we want to do any more about it, about invasive lighting or light pollution, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that part kind of interests me, and I don't know how easy and hard it is to regulate. I roll my eyes every time I hear this dark sky, and we've had to come up
It's
and play with
probably
it a
not
lot.
that. It's not.
I'm just like, you know, we do not have a dark sky, nor can we ever have one with where we are situated
Well, but
relative to Austin.
it's just the shielding of all the lights, so you don't see the bulbs. I mean, in almost every buy these
I guess I
pictures,
just don't like that it's called
Well,
dark sky.
I
That's
can, I
dumb.
can tell you,
It
you'll
is,
find
but
them, you'll find a lot of complaints.
And I
about-
wondered what I have. I mean, I have
Yeah,
landscape
in the
lighting, I don't
survey
know.
comments, you will find a lot of complaints about neighbors who
Yeah, I
shine
read
their
that.
lights into other people's yards.
I'd like
and
to
it-
think that they would tell their neighbor that.
They
but-
have already told them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, some of these comments are 3 words, some of them are dissertations.
Yeah.
People write a whole lot of
Okay.
stuff in there about what their experiences are and what they like and what they don't like and all that, and lighting was a pretty big one.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
saw that. in
you
there.
know, again, I don't think they necessarily understood the questions that we were asking around lighting. We didn't do as good a job with that as we did in some other areas. But we got a bucket full of answers having to do with lighting, and a lot of it was the complaints about neighbors. So we thought, well, okay, well, we better look at this.
It's a hard thing to figure out how to regulate.
Yeah.
The invasive lighting thing. I mean,
It's not. They make shielded lights that meet this definition.
Oh,
Like all the commercial,
No,
you
no,
know, all
no.
the lighting
So,
companies.
dark sky, I mean, my mom's built in a neighborhood that had a dark sky restriction, and it's like you can get qualified things that are dark sky. So I'm talking about what I think the neighbor comments are. That's like somebody has a spotlight in their backyard, and it's angled in a way that goes in my back bedroom window. That's what they're annoyed by.
Which you wouldn't be able to do if you required like shielded fixtures, right? You can't use those kind of fixtures. I think it's what.
Well, is shielded just the one that has like a hood?
Well, it's
on
just
part
it
of
will
it?
have a hood so that the light only
The
shines
bulb itself-
down, and the bulb will be
is
up
concealed.
inside.
Yeah, the bulb is
so
concealed, and so that it's
you just don't look at it and
It's
see
down.
like there's.
I
The,
Maybe
wonder
that's
what I
the
have.
case,
I don't
but then
know
you're
what
gonna
I
have
have.
people that are like, I have security lights that are.
you can buy those shielded. You can
Okay.
buy all of these.
I mean, I have some that come in through my window. I think I don't know that they're shielded, but
They're probably not.
maybe I think even if you had the shield, because of the way our houses are situated,
There's
they'd
some.
still come into our
There's
window.
certainly if you're down below, you're gonna look up and see it, but it's somewhat helpful.
anyway,
You're looking at it.
we're gonna, yeah, and we're
Yeah.
gonna, build off of the commercial corridor light. I don't know whether we'll go any further than what they did or what. What I've seen, it's not that big a deal, but it's mostly like what Mike was saying about how, the kind of light fixture that you would use and it's properly shielded so that it only goes straight down and so on, doesn't go out too far and bother people. Okay, now, recommended against current actioning is, we're not gonna talk about the number of stories you're allowed to have.
Why did y'all decide that?
I'm sorry?
Why did y'all decide that? What was the?
Well, a lot of people didn't care. We thought people would. And we
Yeah, I
asked if
kinda like
whether or
that
not
one,
there
but-
should be restrictions on the number of stories, and most people didn't care for it. It didn't matter. It's more the height, not the number of stories. You can have,
Okay.
layer cake if you want, who cares?
That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't have any, yeah, okay. The overall area of the top story to be handled by, we had been kicking around the idea that we would start forcing stories as you went up higher, they had to be smaller. Some smaller percentage of maybe what the base story was, right? We think that with our building envelope, we're gonna be handling that, so we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna talk about zoning districts. There was some discussion about, some people have properties that have special requirements, or that they have to spend more money doing this or that. Can we have some kind of relief so that we're allowed to build things? We're not gonna do it.
It was interesting. That one actually had a fair amount of traction in the survey, didn't it? From
What, having building? I guess there were people.
Zoning districts?
Well, it
Yeah, I
wasn't
think it was-
50%.
I was surprised. I think it was a-
50%, but there.
I don't even know what that question really means. Like,
It's like, oh, this
Would you
one's
have,
super
like,
sloped, so it's a different zoning.
Would you have a different zoning category for things like
Yeah.
lot size
Yeah.
or slope? But then you've got to go
Yeah.
and spot
I-
zone. And,
Oh, like
it's-
if it'd be easy if there was like a clear ravine
Yeah.
here.
well,
and
it's
you
like
go-
these lots are in Austin. It's
Yeah.
lot size.
It's a
You have an
bit of a
acre,
rabbit
it's
hole.
SF6. You got less than 5,000 square feet. It's SF2.
I see.
Or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a rabbit hole. If we started going down it, we'd never find the bottom.
Yeah, I
We
think
just
so.
won't.
Talk about like the opposite of simplifying our code.
Or it was
too.
about 50-50.
Exactly.
I
I was
would
surprised by
do,
that.
like for these lots it's this,
say
but
that.
if it's that lot,
Yeah,
then it's
favor
this.
special zoning
Okay.
districts, yeah.
Then we had kicked around the idea of using
Yeah, I have
FAR,
to look at what the question
floor area ratios and, prescribing them. We're probably not gonna do that. We are still talking about it, but probably not. We think that the other controls that we're talking about and putting in place, we think will handle that better than FAR. And then we're also,
Those are pretty detailed.
we said that we agreed that we're not gonna talk about impervious cover anymore. And I can tell you that the community response on the impervious cover question was pretty high. There were a lot of people who wanted us to do something. And since I talked to city council, I've heard from other people who are saying, what are you not doing? Why aren't you doing something with impervious cover? And what I'm getting from people is, I don't know what you should do, but you should do something. So we're gonna look at our current drainage ordinances and our DCM and see whether or not there's something there that needs attention, but I honestly, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know.
The 61% said no
Yeah.
on this part.
It sounds like the community doesn't think we need to do much with it either, right?
Well, if you say 61%, that's right, but that means that 39% think maybe you should do something. Maybe 61% aren't affected by it. The other 39% are down at the bottom of some valley somewhere, and they think that doing something about impervious cover will fix it. I don't know.
So
Yeah, I've always come back to, we've talked
But-
about this one a lot of times, and I just say, well, then does that mean our
Yeah.
drainage ordinance is
Well,
not
what-
working?
that's right.
Then
And-
should we be
so
focused on the
what's-
drainage ordinance?
What's interesting that I've kind of somewhat figured out recently is that
Yeah.
what's the best way to describe this? It's a little complicated, but so your building, your whatever your roof area is, basically doesn't count towards your impervious cover because we have an ordinance allowing us to capture that as rainwater and use it, right? And so then when you go and do the math on impervious cover, you're picking up the other stuff and you're detaining for it. And you are theoretically still detaining the roof and all that. So the drainage ordinance doesn't, like what you're detaining doesn't change as you trade house for driveway or whatever else. But oddly, like you can build a larger structure with less paving than you can a smaller structure with more paving, if that makes sense. So there's almost an incentive the way that the drainage, the math works because of this ordinance, to where you're encouraging impervious cover that's a house is less punitive than impervious cover that is, flat work or anything else.
Because
So
you
it's-
can catch the water and you can
Because
manage the
you
drainage.
because you offset it. And so so I don't know. I don't like changing the impervious cover, and I don't know that I don't know. I feel like considering FAR, as long as it still is reasonable, which is a hard
I
test.
don't like FAR because you get into, is it conditioned space, not conditioned space, do garages count, all this other stuff.
You can just do gross though. Just do gross. Anything under a roof, it can be conditioned. That way you get out of the people conditioning something after or whatever,
Do you have
and
an
make
idea?
it a big number.
You have an idea what a number ought to be?
So what's an average lot is? I mean, what
In our neighborhood.
20,000 square feet average?
In our neighborhood, our lots are around a third of an acre. The minimum lot size in Rowanwood is 15,000 square feet. Okay, so, and we are, in our neighborhood, that's pretty much most of what the lots are. They're right around
Yeah.
a third of an acre. So, other parts of Rollingwood, I think, as you head further east, they get a lot larger.
Yeah, I don't think it's unreasonable that you should you should be able to build a larger house by right on a larger lot.
I don't either.
You know, I don't think that's an unreasonable,
No.
and that's what FAR
We are,
is
we
doing.
are not against
When you
large
can
houses.
now. too.
Yeah, just
Well,
to be
now-
clear,
Setbacks,
we're,
your buildable
yeah.
area is bigger.
yeah. We are not against large houses. We have problems with houses that overwhelm a lot.
Yeah.
Dave, I'm so sorry, I have to
Yeah, I
leave
know.
for a call, but
Okay.
you guys have been doing, I think we all agree, like, this is awesome work.
Yeah.
And thank you for
Impressive.
putting this in such an easily digestible form. Walking through this has been a huge value tonight, so really appreciate it. You guys are, please pass our appreciation and thanks
Yes.
I
on
will do that.
to the
We'll do
CR,
that.
SR.
I'm gonna carry a full
SR.
message back, you know, at our
CR.
next meeting, but.
CRCRC.
Be prepared, as planning and zoning, to be having a lot more of this kind of discussion at our meetings, because this is where we're headed.
Yeah.
Now, I heard a lot of negatory here, and that's okay, I'm good.
Not really.
I feel
No,
like it was
no,
just,
well, you know, yeah.
just
I-
side setbacks.
setbacks.
I think.
Setbacks
I
is
didn't
my-
hear an overwhelming support for, changing the setbacks, let's face it.
Well, I don't really care about the setbacks. I don't,
There's only one, Dave, come on.
what my main concern is, I don't want to be perceived as overruling the
Yeah.
opinion of the city. That's my main concern.
Yeah, but so much of this is great, and I think we all kind of felt like it was like exactly what
Yeah.
the survey was tracking towards. So
We- okay,
I just want to let you know that if any one of you
I
leaves,
know,
we lose
we
quorum.
won't have a
so-
quorum.
All right,
Yeah,
should we vote
yeah.
to adjourn?
Okay,
Well-
I'm gonna move on to agenda item number 4, which is to thank Greg DeMoss for his service in planning and zoning. I really think we're gonna miss Greg. He was,
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
input was fabulous.
What is he moved? He moved out of the
I
city.
don't know
heard?
where he's moving.
Yeah.
He's moving out of Rollingwood. He sent me a note, and he's gone. He couldn't
Just
make
played
it
with him in the
tonight.
golf tournament not that long ago.
But I wish he were still here. I thought he was a real asset to the group.
maybe it was
and,
that golf tournament, Tony.
yeah.
Maybe so.
So,
Too much, Tony.
anyway, and then on to agenda item number 5, which is discussion regarding an open position on planning and zoning. We do have an open position with Greg's absence. There are a couple of folks out there that have applied for the position. If you know anybody that you feel that would be good in this group, to have the same kind of conversation we just had, which I thought was great, please advise them, encourage them to sign up. We need more people. We need people in the wings, that can, we need a bench.
Was the city council meeting that you presented at, was that the last meeting, or has there been another one since
It was
then?
the last
That was the last
city
meeting.
council meeting.
So do we
This-
know if they've got people that they're considering appointing at the next meeting, or they, whatever
Well,
candidates
you
they have
guys
are
have all
no-go?
been reinstated.
Right.
And that happened in the last city
Yeah.
council meeting, all right? That just happened.
Yeah, so everyone was reappointed that was up for reappointment, that's on P and Z. And then when Greg sent in his resignation, they will have to accept his resignation at this next meeting. And then they will have the opportunity to appoint someone. And we do have a list of people that have applied.
So we
But
just don't know what
as
city
many
council
choices
wants to
as
do yet.
possible
Yeah.
would be great for them.
It's, traditionally, it's been a first into the, if you get your application in, you're the first one to be selected for this, for the commission that you're applying for. I don't agree that that's the best way to do it, and I've told city council that, and I do believe that
You have my
we-
proxy to vote to
yeah,
adjourn. if
we
you-
should be looking for people that we believe are suitable for this.
All right, we done?
That's it. That's all I got.
Okay.
Okay. We've
I move
lost
we
our
adjourn.
quorum, and so I adjourn this
7:55.
meeting at 7:55. It's not, we can't